I mean, so like there's been lots of times where I've drawn something or and I've heard about it,
Yeah.
So, but like the guys who drew Muhammad, or what country was that? Was it France? I think it was France. Well, but anyway, they got killed because of it. It's
Yeah.
like so people take cartoons very seriously. I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah, man. It's just so crazy how I don't know. Just imagine dying over a cartoon is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Whereas drawing, you have the luxury of like actually making it look exactly as you want it to come out. You know what I mean? You have to sketch it out firsthand, like roughly, and try different thumbnail layouts of what's going to work and what's not going to work, and then
Right.
eventually pencil it, and then eventually ink it, as you know.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
How do I say your last name?
Raski, Raski.
Raski. All right.
Raski. It was Polish. My dad was Polish. It used to be like something like Raskowski, but somewhere along the line it got shrunk down.
Oh man, during the immigration process. I'm just gonna intro you. We're here.
Sure.
Episode 15, Andrewcast, and we have Tom Raski, right?
You got it.
That's how we say it. Tom Raski in the building. He is Bucks County Cartoon. He's Bucks County Courier Times. He does a lot of graphic art for them and stuff like that. And I used to work with him when I worked at Bucks County Courier Times. And he's a super talented guy. He does a lot of awesome drawings, like really sick monsters, and just cool stuff that like you would never think to draw. He draws it, man.
Yeah, that's about right.
A lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's been my life for like the last 40 years or so. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And like when did you like start drawing? I guess that's a typical question you get.
Well, sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I would from like day one. Honestly, my mom she kept the drawing that I drew in kindergarten. I drew like a school bus or something like that. If I was 4 years old in kindergarten, and I always liked drawing. I mean, when I was a kid, I had a stack of comics, as I'm sure you did too. A stack of comics that were hand-me-downs from my older cousin.
Yeah.
And they were mostly Superman, but like a bunch of other stuff from like the late 60s, early 70s. And I would copy the panels, and draw Superman and whatever.
Yeah.
And that was the impetus for it. That's the stuff I love the most, So I have somewhere in my mom's house upstate, I still have like boxes of old drawings of Superman and whatever I drew back in those days when I was a kid.
Dude, you need those.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to dig them up. I mean, I'm sure it's true of any guy who draws comics. They all drew something rudimentary when they were young,
right?
Trying to read, Superman or Batman or whatever, So yeah, I do have to dig those up. Next time I go upstate, I'll have to find those. They're somewhere in the basement.
There's nothing like that feeling of like. I've done that too. I feel like everybody has who's into comic books. They are redrawing like panels, and you look at it, you're like, "Wow, it kind of looks like close to like what I'm looking." And you feel so excited
until you go back and look at it later in life, and you say, "Holy Christ, what was I thinking?"
His eye is so far from like where it's supposed to be.
I remember when I was a kid, I would draw. I mean, to me, the hardest thing to draw was the face. So when I was a kid, I would draw everything else first, and I'd leave the face for last. And I was always scared to put those, the last touches on it,
Because that's the most telling is the face.
Yeah. The face is everything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I start with the face.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So, I guess that changes. Now I have no problem drawing faces. That's like the easiest thing for me to draw.
Right. You still struggle with hands? I mean, I
No,
feel like
no. Well, I
everybody
mean, hands are a pain in the butt. They really are. I mean, hands are tougher for me than faces. But yeah, I mean, I have a couple books on how to draw hands properly, and I learned, anatomy in college and all that, the best way to draw hands. But believe me, hands are really tough.
Yeah.
To get the fingers, the knuckles right, and the bending right, and everything. Everything it's really tough.
Yeah, that's usually the big struggle for everybody. But like when I look at your illustrations, I don't really see any
Yeah.
of that.
Well, thanks, man.
It's pretty crazy, just like how much skill that you have. But I noticed that like you have a taste for the grotesque, like the monstrous.
Oh yeah.
And like I was thinking about this earlier today because I draw a lot myself, and there's something about drawing a monster that's just like so stress relieving.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you're making like the exaggerated brow, and like the eyes with like the slits for pupils, and you look at it, you just like you feel like I just got something out.
Well, not only that, but you can't screw it up.
Right.
There's no way to do it wrong.
I never thought about that. There's no wrong way to draw a monster.
No, there's not. Whatever you're drawing, you're making it up. Unless you're like, it's funny you bring that up because I used to hate drawing real animals.
Right.
Like if someone asked me to draw their puppy or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. You got to get it just right.
So specific.
So it's like a human face.
Especially if it's a picture of their dog specifically.
Oh yeah.
And then you start focusing on things that you shouldn't focus on. Like you start drawing all the hairs.
Yeah,
and you're like, no, I should just like generalize.
And I'll tell you, if you're even with a human face or an animal's face, whatever, if your eyeball or nose is off by a millimeter, it screws everything up.
Yeah.
Everything is wrong. Because the human face, you figure there's 7 billion people in the world. Everybody looks different, and we're all basically the same. So we're all made of honestly, God, we're like only the slightest, like half the population is male, the other half is female.
Yeah.
Different races, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, so tens of millions of people all have the same people have the same characteristics, but yet we all look different, except for identical twins.
You summed it up perfectly.
Yeah.
Man. That's like the grand struggle too.
Yeah.
When because people, exactly what you said. You ask people what would you like me to draw? Because draw something for me, and the first thing they say is themselves.
Oh yeah,
and it's just I want to say, really, your imagination is so shallow that like you can't.
The last thing I'd want to have someone draw is me.
I'm the same way. I'm like that too. Like, dude, I don't want to see me. Like, I know what I look like.
Oh, dude, I used to have to do self-portraits in college, and that's a horrible thing.
Why?
Just because, number one, you have to stare at yourself in a mirror, and that's just horrible.
Yeah.
So I did a few of those, and the one here I'll get a kick out of this one. So the one class for self-portrait, the guy had me have some leeway with it.
Yeah.
So I drew this is so stupid. I drew myself as a two-headed me, and the left head was eating the ear of the right head. It was all bloody and gross. I wish I knew where that was. I haven't seen that in years, man.
That's my point, though. That's the kind of stuff you draw. That's what makes that's what I love about your illustrations, man. Like when I worked. That's what I loved. You know what I'm saying? I really love the kind of drawings that you made, the really like scary ones.
Yeah, well, I have a philosophy that I've always had, like when it comes to like drawing things. I always wonder, I have great respect for guys who draw things like that are like photorealistic. And but the caveat is, I say to myself, okay, what's the point? Like, why wouldn't I just take a picture of that?
Right.
If you say, I've seen guys draw these super fantastic drawings in pencil or whatever of something so it looks like a photograph of like a really difficult a mirror's reflection and like chrome or glass, something like that, and everything it looks like a photograph. I'm like, okay, it's an excellent like exercise in talent and ability.
Right.
But what the hell's the point? Just go take a picture of that thing.
I'm totally with you because like. When you're drawing something like that, you're exercising your observation. Like, obviously, your observation is extremely keen.
Right.
Because to capture, like, shading is the big thing.
Oh, yeah.
To capture, like, the way that the light is hitting the object accurately so that it looks photorealistic.
Sure.
That is, like, half the battle, if not, like, the full battle.
Right.
But I'm like you. I admire people who draw from, like, their imagination.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm like, wait a second. Like, there's no... I mean, you might have studied something, like you might have looked at a plant to make like this alien that you drew. Yeah. But besides that, like you didn't, it came out of your head. I love that stuff.
You need to get like the basic anatomy correct too. Like it's goofy, but when you're drawing like some alien thing, you kind of want it to make sense anatomically. Like in other words, you want like the head has to have a neck big enough to it could support it.
Yeah.
Or muscles that can carry like weight around. So just from following basic human anatomy, you can kind of follow things to like make it. So it kind of makes sense. You don't. Yeah. It doesn't have to, but
it's more striking if it's believable.
Right.
But to go back to a point that you made previous when you drew that picture of the your two-headed self and the one head was eating the other ear.
Yeah.
Did you was that? Is there any meaning behind that? Do you think?
No, it was just me being bizarre to be bizarre. It's like sometimes you do stuff like that. You just do stuff because it's like completely unexpected.
It makes you stand out.
I guess. Yeah, sure.
Is that how you always were in school?
Oh God, Christ!
Like artistic?
When I was a kid, it's funny because now that I'm on Facebook and I have so many people. Like every once in a while, I'll have like someone from high school send me a picture of something I drew on their notebooks back in high school. That was my thing back in high school. I don't know if he'd still do it in school nowadays, but we used to get like notebooks that were blank on the covers. They were all blank.
Was it a schedule or?
No, it was like just a book to take notes in.
Yeah.
So you're back in the old, what do you call it? The analog days, when you actually had to write things down.
Yeah.
You'd have notebooks and you would write stuff, and the notebooks were generally blank on the covers, and so I would take it upon myself to grab anybody's notebook that was in class.
Yeah.
And because everybody in school knew I drew.
Right.
And no one gave me any crap about it. They all liked my drawings except for one girl who didn't want me to draw on her notebook. One girl out of like.
She's like super OCD.
Maybe. Yeah, seriously, maybe. But anyway, but she was the one girl. It was like it took me like aback in high school. I'm like, oh, what you really don't want a Raski original? Like my fragile ego. So, but everybody else loved it, and the stuff that I drew was out of left field. I mean, no sometimes monsters, but it was this bizarre stuff that made no sense to anyone but me. And even I look at it now because, like I said, they'll post it on Facebook. I'll have no recollection of drawing it, none whatsoever. And I can tell it's my style, and I'm like, oh God, what the hell what did this mean? I have no idea, and I get the biggest kick out of it. And now I can look at, take it into Photoshop and actually clean it up a little bit.
Oh man, that's cool. So you can kind of like return the drawing to them if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, I'll post it on my Facebook and say, hey, this is crap I did 30 years ago. It means absolute nothing, but but it's still fun to see after all these decades.
Did you ever draw on her notebook? Like, did it ever happen? And like she got mad at you?
I don't know. I don't think so. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember her name. I really don't. But I just remember that one instance. Yeah. Like the one time somebody didn't want a Raski original. I was like, because most people were more than happy to just have me draw some crazy shit on their notebook.
Well, that's how I was when I was young. Like when I was really young, I didn't have a lot of friends because like I didn't play like sports or anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I wasn't like the most social kid, but like I could draw.
Like,
my early like I remember just like my early years of school, like that was what I used to make friends.
Oh
like,
yeah, me too.
People
Same
were
thing.
Just like, yo, you could draw like, and at the time like Pokemon was big, so
yeah.
just like, can you draw Pikachu? Can you draw Bulbasaur? I was like, yeah, like no problem. Like,
no
I
problem.
can do this. And like that's like how people started like to warm up to me. And like, I was super grateful for that because like that was like my guiding light. Man, I used to in kindergarten I used to skip nap time because I just wanted to draw.
Like, no kidding. That's great.
That's how big it was for me.
It's funny. I bet you it's true of most artists, honestly. Because I'm another guy. I don't give a damn about sports. Not even at my age. I just couldn't care less.
Yeah, my brother plays football in college, and he's so into it. But like, I don't care about it too much.
No, I never understood. If you're great at sports, God bless you. Good for you.
Totally, man.
I used to play sports. I used to like playing sports in high school and whatnot. But like paying attention to it now, like professional sports, and like not my thing. No,
totally, man.
I don't quite understand the attraction, to be honest with you. But whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to art, like when I was a kid, drawing. That was the thing. I would just love to draw for people. I just gave it away. Didn't ever want a dime for it. Just trying to draw, like just for drawing's sake. Used to draw on the blackboards at school. The teachers would let me for holidays or whatever draw some Christmas scene or something, and of course I would make it twisted, or I would do something with Santa Claus coming down the chimney with an axe or something like that.
Were the teachers like drawn back by that?
I remember one time I think it was the assistant principal came to me. And I forgot about this because the teachers all knew what I was about. They did say, look, let Raski do his thing. Whatever, shut him up for like a few hours.
They're just like, Tom's crazy.
Yeah, let him do his thing. So, but the one time that I remember that the vice principal took me aside and said, I think I had the Easter Bunny shooting a gun with I don't remember why, but I remember him saying something about why can't he be using chocolate bullets or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's all I remember. It's like I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. There's nothing cool about that.
Nothing cool about that.
It's not edgy enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be drawing this stuff on the blackboard in the middle of class, or everybody else would be doing class stuff, like learning math or whatever. And there's Raski in the corner, like drawing on the blackboard, and I had full permission to do it.
Yeah.
To decorate for the class or whatever. So that was me. I guess it was middle school for doing that kind of stuff, because by the time you're in high school, that stuff's over.
Yeah. That was similar to me too, man. When I was in middle school, there was like a mural that they wanted me to work on in the library, and I got out of classes to go like work on that, man. I loved it. I was like, oh, this is great. Like I could do this all day. I remember thinking to myself, like I could literally, I wish I didn't have to go to class. Like I could just sit in this library and
That's
draw all
funny,
day.
man. You and I have that in common, because I did the same thing, man. My senior year, the swim coach came to me, Mr. Trebendus, and he says, I could use a mural in the pool. I was like, okay. So I painted this mural in the pool, and it got me out of class for days and days. Maybe weeks, I don't remember.
Was this one toned down a bit?
Oh yeah, it was. Our school mascot was a Spartans, so
sweet.
I drew like a Spartan swimming underwater, and
Awesome.
I've gone back to look at it just like a few years ago. It's still there,
Wow.
and it's god awful. I look at it and I say, oh Jesus. I took a picture of me. My buddy took a picture of me standing next to it, and it's this. I mean, the anatomy is okay, I guess, but the composition is just rudimentary as hell. And I drew, like, our school was Wyoming Valley West, so I have a big WVW down there. He's swimming down to that, and he's got the Spartan helmet on and like a big spear. Oh, it's god awful. I'll show you. I'll show you later.
I gotta check it out.
Oh, it's just piss poor.
But hey, man, no, you left your mark on your school.
No, yeah, it's still there. At least it was. I think it was still there within the last couple of years, because a couple of my friends have their kids in swim class, and they'll post a video or something on Facebook or whatever, and I'll see it in the background. It's like, oh God, it's still there. It would be one thing if it was really good, and I'd be proud of it that it's still there. But after like 30 plus years, it's still there, and no one's painted over it yet. God Almighty.
I'm with you, dude. I mean, I feel like every artist is self-conscious about like old stuff they made, because like in their mind, when they're looking at it, like they're improving it and fixing stuff that they want to fix. They're like, it's just like the chin is off of stuff like that.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
like, you're in high school, man. Like that's a statement in itself.
Yeah. Plus, it was my only mural I ever did.
Yeah.
So and I didn't have any of the technology to project it onto the screen or to the wall, which is what you should do for a mural. Get the proportions just right.
That's what they always did at my school.
Did they?
Like,
yeah.
Projection.
Yeah, I did, because when you're drawing something on that scale, and you're like an inch away from it, you're getting everything is off, skewed, and
it's
you're
annoying because you constantly have to step back,
step
forward,
and when you're up on a ladder or whatever, that's not so easy, So so that's my one and only mural, and that was enough. I have done some with for my buddies, like he wanted like an Eagles logo on behind his bar at his house, so we got like the projector out and did it properly with the perspective. It takes a minute to do it, not a minute, but like an hour versus like days.
You're just filling in the blanks.
Basically,
it's
you're
a pretty
tracing.
Smooth process.
Yeah.
I like that stuff, man. I like doing stuff for friends, man. I'm the same way. Like, just to hit on an earlier point you said, where you draw something and you don't charge anybody for it. I mean, obviously you've probably done commission stuff. I have too. Yeah. But like, it's just cool to have somebody walk away and like experience something you made, and like you look at their face like while they're drawing it. Like, that was a big thing for me when I was younger. I was like, whoa, like this person really likes this.
That's
held
true.
on to it.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, except for the one girl who didn't want any drawings on her notebook, Miss OCD.
Hey man, who knows, man? She lost out. But,
I guess, or of something.
So, what made you decide? And you majored in art in college, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
What made you decide? Like, was that just you knew right away? You're like, dude, I
from day one. Yeah, from day one. When I was a kid, like I said, drawing Superman. And when I got older, like there was a TV show called The $6 Million Man. I used to draw that character all the time.
Robot, right?
Yeah, cyborg, whatever, like half robot. I'm sure they'll make a movie out of it eventually.
Right,
it's
just like
everything else gets made retro. So the actor was Lee Majors, and he's still around.
Yeah.
And I remember I actually drew a picture of Lee Majors when I was a kid as a $6 Million Man, and I mailed it to him, hoping he would autograph it.
Oh.
Yeah, well, he didn't. Instead, in return, I got like a $6 million man like starter kit for like a fan club, So it's like a phony autograph photo of Lee Majors and like something that you can join the fan club for like you pay $20 or $10 or whatever, So my drawing of Lee Majors never made it to Lee Majors, I'm guessing.
Oh man.
Yeah. So yeah, but anyway. So if I'll tell you, he does like the comic circuits nowadays in his old age.
Oh,
so
he goes to, like Comic-Con
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. I'm tempted to go there sometime and say, hey, listen,
Do you have like
No,
oh,
no, I don't
man.
have it. I just remember it. It's one of those things that I remember when I was a kid because I remember when I got the kit in the mail. I was excited to get that, but I'm opening it up and I'm like, okay, where's the autographed drawing? And it wasn't there, So anyway, that was an early lesson on how like I guess celebrity works,
Right.
Well,
that's just like the letters that they receive. Well, nowadays it's like there's so many entertainers out there, and it's super easy to get fan art to them because you just send it to them on Instagram or Twitter.
That's true. Yeah.
And then they just receive it personally. Like there's
Yeah.
no like screening or anything like that, and it's cool because now you can get featured on someone's Instagram. Like,
That's a good point.
and
Yeah.
it's really interesting like how short that process has become. When
Yeah.
I was like that too. Like I would want to like mail in drawings to places and
Yeah.
stuff. Like whenever I was reading a magazine, they were just like,
Yeah.
with kids magazine at the end, it's like submit your own character. I
Sure.
was that kid who's like,
Oh,
I
okay.
spent all this time like drawing
Yeah.
it. I send it in. I'm like waiting to see it in the magazine.
That's awesome.
That was totally me.
That's awesome, man.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. Yeah, that's the luxury of being an artist, I guess. You can draw stuff like that and hope to get it back from the person you're sending it to.
So you majored in art in college. How was that? Like, did you?
Oh, it was great. I had a ball. I went to Kutztown up in central Pennsylvania up there, but
Sweet.
near Allentown, Reading. And they had a great art program, and it was a state school. It wasn't really expensive because we didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I did because I met some of my best friends of my life going to that school.
Right.
Going up there. I mean, I'm still, as a matter of fact, a bunch of us are going back for a 30-year anniversary. We know more than that because we all turned 50 this year. We all turned 50 within like a month of each other, like within a month.
Whoa.
And we're all going back up to Kutztown to get stay at a B&B or something like that. Or we might actually go to the Finger Lakes up in New York or something like that. Anyway, long story short, but back in '85 when I started college, here's a funny thing. Here's a little caveat. They always say like. When you graduate high school, you think you know everything, and when you get to college, you find out how you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my case, because you graduate from like high school as an artist, and you're in a small gene pool. You're the best artist in school.
Right. You're in the yearbook.
Your stuff is everywhere. You're the guy that everybody goes to. And then you get to college and you see, oh my God, there's some people who have some serious talent here. And all of a sudden, it's like learning, to start over again.
Right.
You have real competition. I mean, I remember some people were like, you look at their work and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible.
It's intimidating.
You got to step up your game. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
big time. I mean, but so some of the anatomy things I was doing wrong with the human face when I was in high school, I immediately corrected with a couple of professors, like anatomy professors in college. Like, for example, I remember one professor pointed out that I would always draw like the back of the jaw too shallow, from the ear down to the chin. It was almost like a straight line.
You didn't leave enough.
I didn't leave enough of an angle for what was it, the mandible,
Yeah.
I guess, in the back, to have like the right angle. So that was one thing I corrected pretty early on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, look back at those old drawings from high school. Everybody's got like these pointy chins because the chin almost started in a straight line from their ear.
Yeah.
So, but now I learned, oh yeah, look at that. And anatomy now it looks better,
Exactly.
It's where it's supposed to go,
Yeah. Were you one of those drawers that used like a figure, like to reference?
Well,
or?
well, we did that. We did the whole, the figure drawing in college. We had like all the models. We had some nude models. We had some, like just models wearing bodysuits or whatever. And that was another horror scene because I'll tell you, I mean, I used to get pissed off when we go to class and it was some freak model. It was just like there was one that was like
Bodysuits, what, just like leotards?
just in the one case, yeah, the bodysuit was just like she was a college student,
Okay.
and she didn't want to pose nude. It's whatever.
Yeah,
So
of
she just
course,
wore a
yeah.
bodysuit. And it's the same thing for the most part. You're just getting like
You're looking
this,
for the muscles.
the
and
muscles
stuff,
and
yeah.
whatever. So yeah, but every once in a while you'd have like they probably paid these models like, I don't know, minimum wage whenever they come in off the street or whatever, and then you get like a real freak show of naked people in front of you, and like, oh, it was horrible, man. I'm sure like better schools would have better models. Maybe they do now. I don't know, man, but Oh, I used to get so pissed off if I went to class and it was like this model was like some 60-year-old like middle-aged guy with a big beer belly, and like there's one guy looked like he was Amish because he had like the Amish beard with no mustache, and he had long hair, but he had these weird veins in his arms that looked like track marks. I mean, it was insane. It was absolutely crazy.
That's so funny. Like, why would those people volunteer to do
because
that?
they're getting paid the $4 an hour to do it, I guess. I don't know.
So when you were in school, like trained to be like an artist, like, did it bother you that like people were telling you like what to draw, or like that none of that bothered you?
No,
I feel
it was
that's a popular complaint when people want to go to art school. They're just like, I don't want people telling me what to draw. And
well,
stuff
I'll tell you one story about one time I did get pissed off. It was an anatomy class too.
Yeah.
Again, we had the model in front of us, and I was drawing the model, as accurately as I could.
Right.
And there was some kid next to me, some kid drawing. He was taking the body of the model and drawing it as a landscape. So they're turning the curves of the hips into mountain ranges, stuff like that.
Was that part of the assignment?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, that's where you get.
But the professor, this loon of a professor, she loved it. She loved it. And I remember I'm not struggling in the class, but I was like getting a little pissed that, okay, I'm drawing this woman or a guy or whatever it was, like anatomically correct.
Painstaking
detail, getting everything just right, and I'm doing it in the allotted time. And meanwhile, the guy next to me is drawing like, trees and a mountain range and everything else. And I'm looking at it. I remember going to the professor after class and complaining just like that. I'm like, okay, I'm drawing this woman or man as exactly as they look in front of me.
Right, which takes so much focus.
So much focus. And the guy next to me is drawing a mountain range, which, believe me, as an artist, doing landscapes is a breeze.
Totally, man. You draw a tree with your eyes closed.
Yeah, exactly. So that ain't no thing,
know. She said
so? No, but she tried to explain it. It's like she's like, well, this is a fine arts class, and he took some interpretation, blah blah blah. And I'm looking at it and saying, oh, God almighty.
Just imagine that teacher pretentious, like, okay, just look at, like, Samuel's example. Like, he's so creative. And you're like, oh, my God.
I want to throw Samuel over a cliff. Yeah. So anyway, so that was that story from art school. Yeah, so anyway, but for the most part, your original question was, did they, give you some slack? And most times they did.
Yeah.
I remember one time, here's a funny story. I had this class in lettering. You want to talk about something that's completely obsolete in 2017?
Dude, that's something that I hated because that was like such a thing. I did a lot of the T-shirts for high school, class T-shirts.
Yeah,
like it was always like
horrible.
They want me to draw the lettering. I'm like, dude, like you can use a computer for this.
Yeah. I mean, my God, I remember having to painstakingly take this lettering class, and you actually had to learn how to hand letter and calligraphy and all that.
Do you think that class exists anymore?
I doubt it. I mean, honestly, I doubt it because Photoshop and whatever came along and just made that obsolete overnight.
Unless you're a tattoo artist, like you don't really know how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But I remember like being in this class, and I remember the one assignment. This is a great story. The one time I had to do like just letter like the name of a song, and I picked Warren Zevon's "Lawyers, Guns, and Money" for some reason. I don't know why I did that. So anyway, I write out "Lawyers, Guns, and Money," and like I get halfway through the assignment, and the thing's almost done. And somebody points out, hey, you spelled lawyers wrong, you idiot. You left out the Y. So it was lawyers, guns and money. So I had to start completely over from scratch. And like, from that point on, I'm like, oh God, just learn how to read. How could you screw that up?
I get it, but it makes you feel dumb. I feel like everyone's been in that position because you're focusing so much on what the letter looks like that you're not. Because when you write something out, it's effortless. But when you're looking at like the shape of the L and the A, and you're trying to make them the same size on the same like plane, you miss the letters. I've done that before. And when I'm drawing like comics, like. When I first started drawing comics, I used to draw all the sound effects like by hand. Now I do the sound effects and the font on computer.
Absolutely.
But man, like there was times where I was just like, oh, dude, like I missed the A in that. You know what I'm saying? And now it just looks really bad.
The only time you want to draw something by hand is if you like letter by hand is if you want it to have that feel. That feel, like that home drawn appeal. So you want it to be imperfect. Mm-hmm. When you want to look like little Billy drew this while he was laying in bed or something. He didn't want it to be perfect. He's doing the best he can. That kind of whole thing. Mm-hmm. And once in a while that comes up, like if you want that effect. But for the most part, no. You can find any font on
Exactly.
the internet or whatever, and just fine tune it to exactly how you want it.
Right.
And I'm pretty like anal about when it comes to like if you have like a fancy font and it has double letters like ladder say, and you have LADDER, and you don't want to have the two D's look identical. If it's like a weird font that's like a hand-drawn font, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
so
it won't look organic.
It won't look organic. So I'll actually go through the trouble of like actually changing one of the D's so it looks different from the other one.
Really?
Yeah, take it to warp it or something, or just change it ever so slightly so
Add
it's
like
not
an extra
obvious
line,
that's the exact same thing, or tilt it or twist it or something. You can, it's easy enough to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like overall though that like you enjoyed art school, because the only reason I asked is because like a lot of people that I know went to art school, like they're jaded because the fact that like people like forced them to do like certain stuff. But it sounds like you just kind of did your own thing.
Yeah, the stuff that I like to. I mean, usually I would try to twist the assignment to make it something that was up my alley. Obviously,
like that's every art class. Right?
Yeah, I guess. But there were times there were assignments, of course, that I hated.
Right.
There was something stupid. I can't think of any examples right now, but I'm sure, believe me, I'm sure over the years there's been something or other that was like, okay, I got to draw this, or back when I was doing like advertising art. That's a whole different thing, because that's what I went to school for. Communication design was essentially advertising art.
That's what I was going to ask you. So the whole time that you were in class, like you were just thinking like, I'm going to draw ads and stuff
yeah.
like that.
So like I did ads for like like doing comps for like for Pontiac or something like that, like doing like having to draw people like hanging out by a Burger King next to their car.
What year range is this?
This is probably like 89, 90. So it was towards the end of my college days, and so
that's still when people were like drawing movie posters and stuff like that.
Stuff was still at that point, but the pre-computer age. I mean, like in college, I think I had one class in computers. And it was super rudimentary. It was back in the Mech Draw days on like a 6-inch screen, in black and white.
Is Mech Draw like an early Photoshop?
It was on your Mac computers. It was super rudimentary. Like you can draw a box and you can draw some lines.
But you had to use a mouse.
Yeah, you did. You used a mouse, but it was like the beginning of all that. Yeah. And I remember there was, and Photoshop was around then too. And one of our assignments was to alter a photo in Photoshop. Okay. And this is a funny story. I got like the highest mark in the class because I did something that nobody else did. Like the professor was thrilled that I did this. And what it was is my buddies and I, we took tons of photos in college.
Right.
And so we took photos of you name it. And back in those days, there was no digital whatever. You had to actually get the photos, the film developed and all that. So it didn't stop me from taking photos of anything stupid. So I took a picture of my buddy, my two pals, my two college buddies, like folding laundry.
Yeah.
Like in the laundromat. So, and I took that picture and I took it into Photoshop, scanned it or whatever, took it into Photoshop and took the one guy's head off of his shoulders and put it in the other guy's hands. And that sounds like that's nothing nowadays.
Right.
Everybody does stuff like that. But back in 1989 or whatever, it was like, oh my God, you can do that easy. And the professor loved it. Like all the other kids in class, like just did like slight, they changed the color of something, or like just went to hue saturation and moved the bar or whatever.
Which probably still was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, probably, because we get back in those days there was everything was done the hard way.
You changed the game, you're a trendsetter.
Yeah, there I was taking my one buddy's head and putting it on my other buddy's hands.
Which is kind of like what a lot of popular memes and Photoshop stuff you see today is. Yeah. It's just like really extreme changes.
Yeah,
so you're kind of ahead of your time.
I guess so. Yeah, I'll tell you, it's probably on a floppy disk somewhere, and it's probably like on a Mac only floppy disk that probably I couldn't recover if I wanted to.
That's cool though, man. So how long were you doing advertising work? Like, did you like it?
Well, no, I didn't. I hated it, and that I'll get into that too if you want to, because that's where the money is in art. Honestly, is like at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is. I assume it still is, but like. That's what I went to school for primarily was. It wasn't fine art. Fine art was like, almost a back seat to communication design, which meant basically you're going to be selling stuff to the public. You'll get a job at an ad agency or whatever, and you'll be doing comps, and you'll be selling, Pampers or Alpo or whatever, to the public. And I'll tell you, that's never what I wanted to do. And it's funny because I never really wanted to get into comics either. As much as I collected comics and I love comics, I never liked the idea of drawing the same thing over and over.
Which is a big part of it, man.
Yeah.
As somebody who's done it for a while, you got to draw. Like, I can draw the main protagonist in my series, like, so fast now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I figured I'd get bored with that. I always liked doing things that were just everything is different.
New, yeah.
And so I got lucky when I got into newspapers way back when, and they hired me upstate in near Wilkes-Barre to be the assistant art director at the Times Leader, and I worked there for a year, and then ended up down at the Bucks County Courier, and I've been there since then, since '92. So 25 years at that place, and we started the reality section back in '95. My buddy Carol started it, working with teenage kids that her kids knew, kids that wanted to get into writing, and and Carol brought me aboard to illustrate some of the stories, and of course that was right up my alley.
Right.
Like I remember one crazy illustration was for something called Cosmic Bowling. One of the bowling alleys around here did something with like teenage bowling at night when they did something with the lights. Yeah, something like that. So I drew like a space alien, bowling like out in space, like asteroids. Oh yeah, stuff like that. So doing stuff like that was a lot of fun, and I could do it like full page illustrations. Which was great because, like when you instead of drawing like something that's just like this big, teeny tiny drawing, you get to have like this big ass canvas like once a week.
Nice.
So that was back in, 90, 95, and here
Nice.
I am, 23 years later, still doing it. Because I found my niche, found this thing that I love doing so much. Drawing like these. I mean, honestly, the illustrations have taken a back seat to like photo shoots. We do that with the kids these days because it's much faster.
Right.
Plus, it gets them in print and turns them into little mini celebrities and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
which is cool. Yeah.
But you still got to like orchestrate it. You still have to have an idea of what you want it to look like when it hits print and then
Right.
online too.
So the newspaper was like a blessing for you, man, because you were just like...
Yeah, because I didn't
no
want to
more
sell
ad
Alpo and Pampers to the public. Like I always said, I'm sure it pays a hell of a lot better.
Right.
But every day going to work, I'm sure the stress is super high. I mean, there's stress at every job, including mine, obviously. But like having to come home and get excited for something you drew the day before, then seeing it in print, it's still exciting. Right. After all these years, seeing something like on the kitchen table or whatever, like something you drew a day ago or a week ago or a year ago, even sometimes, like you see it, it's like, wow, it looks pretty good. So it's exciting,
That's cool, man. I'm like that too. I feel like, just when you're training your mind to draw something that you don't really want to draw, when you come sit down and like try and draw what you do want to draw, you're still in that mindset of just like, oh man, I've just trained myself to just draw like this for a specific.
And a lot
job.
of times you'll get yourself into a groove or a style that sometimes it's hard to shake yourself out of.
Right.
I mean, if you're forced to draw something like for somebody else who wants something completely alien from what you want, it's a little tricky to make them happy. To get them what you just want, like, because you know what you're good at drawing, and they might want something completely out of left field that you have no experience doing.
Right.
So that's a little tricky sometimes, but
yeah, you gotta be prepared for pretty much anything. But.
Yeah. So, but all these years, it's been fun to just draw crazy stuff and still keep drawing crazy stuff, whatever I can get away with.
Yeah, when I was younger, I mean, I was just telling my mom earlier, but like, I used to look at your drawings, man. Like, really look at them, because I used to skip right to that page where it was it was the kid stuff.
Yeah, right.
I was just like, I was too young to understand the stories. Like, this is when I was in elementary school, but I remember just looking at those, and it was the eyes, man. Like I told you before, when I was working, like the way that you drew eyes, like they really, really like captivated me, and that's like when I started to. I don't know, like really get serious about drawing.
That's funny.
One of the things is when I saw your illustrations.
I'll tell you, the eyes are everything. It's funny you should say that, because when it comes right down to you're drawing something, and the eyes are the most important part. You get that right, everything else kind of like is easy. It's crazy, even with the human face. I think the eyes are the toughest thing to get just right.
Right.
A nose is a nose. If the eyes are like a little too far apart or too close together, it just isn't right.
Yeah.
Like or the mouth is a mouth, but the eyes are just something about the shape of the eye, or the way your one eye is closed and one eye is more open, or the arch of the eyebrow. There's a billion different things that can go into just one eye, and you got everything is right.
And then placement. Like for me, like, it's always been about like how far apart are they?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's weird. I've always been fascinated by the judgments that you make on a face based on just like little details like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you put the eyes like further apart when you draw a character or a person, it kind of creates this like, oh, they're kind of stupid or more animal.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm
absolutely.
saying?
It's funny you should say that, because a lot of times I'll draw the eyes and I'll leave out the iris and the round part of your eye.
You'll just make the shape.
I'll make the white of your eye.
Yeah.
And then sometimes with the rest of the drawing, the eyes will go in last. And sometimes I'll do that with I have like a stock eye in Photoshop that I drew years ago, and I use the same eye over and over. If you look at my drawings, you'll notice it's the same eye, just different colors.
You change the color.
Just change the color. And maybe just add more highlights here or there, but it's the same rudimentary shape I'd used years ago. So anyway, so I have this eye, and the eye doesn't know where it wants to go just yet until the drawing is done. And you have to, and sometimes, depending on the drawing, you might want the eyes to be a little bit cross-eyed, or you might want to have the walls a little bit wall-eyed. The eyes a little bit wall-eyed. Eye like going out in like the person might look like he's spaced out or he's drunk or whatever. So you want the person to look a little unsure, or you might want the person just looking up or looking down, so the eye goes in last, and you can kind of float it in Photoshop. You select the area you want the eye to be, and you can kind of actually move it around. In Photoshop, you like make a layer or whatever just for that eye, and you can just like you can play around with different positions where the eye is going to go, and it changes the whole drawing.
See, you're really like into like computer editing your drawings, but like you have to for your job,
That makes it honestly, because I do so many drawings, or at least I used to do so many drawings freehand that I would scan in and sometimes just color, in Photoshop or whatever. But for the most part, these days, everything, however it starts off on paper, it ends up ultimately in Photoshop.
Right.
That's just the nature of the game. And then sometimes into another program, will like InDesign or whatever, I'll play with the type, and do something else with that. But Photoshop can pretty much do anything, that you need to do with art these days. Yeah,
it's cool. And, you're somebody that, because of that, like because of your mastery of Photoshop, because you draw, I feel like you're kind of like doing your dream for a living,
Yeah, kind of.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it lasts, however long newspapers exist, it might be like 15 more minutes, might be 15 more years.
But you could always make content for like a website and stuff like
that.
Like web news and stuff
but
like
I'll
that.
tell you, man, it's great seeing that like 61 pica by 20 inch, sheet of like canvas like once a week.
Yeah.
Or actually a few times a day, depending on the layout. But the reality section is like, once a week. And that's the dimensions for it. And usually it's a big canvas, like once a week, sometimes more than once a week, because we might do a separate one for our Jersey paper.
Okay.
Which is extra work, but it's still fun. But I mean, I do find myself like relying more on photo shoots these days.
Yeah.
Just because taking the time to draw something from scratch, it takes a lot longer.
And your experience with photography too?
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, when I say we do photo shoots, I mean we usually set up with like a pro photographer,
right.
One of our guys or girls, and that we'll shoot for somebody for like half an hour or whatever it takes to get like the right layout or whatever. And I'm sure I could show you plenty of examples of like some that were really super successful and some that were real pains in the butt because the kid couldn't like have the right expression or didn't want to stand where he wanted the kid to stand. But for the most part, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it comes off really well, and it comes out like and these kids will put it on their Facebook if they're still on Facebook, because even Facebook is a thing of the past now. It seems.
Instagram now.
Yeah, well, whatever.
You have an Instagram.
Sure, yeah.
When I found that out, I was shocked.
Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and all that stuff. I'm old, and I still like Facebook the most.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, but anyway, but these kids, like a lot of times, people from out of the area will see it like on their wall or whatever on their Twitter, and their friends are like, "Oh my God, what is this? Like, what is like you're like in the paper? Like what the hell's going on?"
Right.
Here's this kid like doing something crazy, like full length of the page and like some big photo shoot. It's like, oh my God. And then the kids go off to college, and when they come back and return and meet with us, and I always tell them, like, there ain't nothing like that in college, is there? And they're always like, nope, no, there ain't nothing like reality in college. Like, it's a one-shot deal. Like, you do it once in high school, and that's might be the last time you're in print ever.
Right.
As a model or even as an author.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah. So it's cool to have that little spotlight. So in a way, it's fun, even though it's not drawing or anything. But I was thinking the other day, man, you should really make like a separate Instagram for just drawings.
You're right.
You should post like one every day.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Andrew. That's a great idea. Seriously,
I hope you're not just saying
that.
No,
I'm not. Because I'll tell you, I did something like that for Facebook. I mean, you go to Tom Raski artwork on Facebook. I have a page for that. But yeah, Instagram, that's a good idea. I should do that.
Because people can flip through that so fast, and every week you can have like something crazy.
That's a good idea. I'm gonna do that.
The reason I got the idea is because I remember that's the one day at Bucks County Courier Times, like I can't forget. It's like when I went through your sketchbook, man. Like you're just like so nonchalantly like, yeah, like this is just some stuff I did. Like I don't know, just feeling some type of way, and like I remember I was just seeing insane things, dude. Like stuff that was just wrong. Like I was just like, yo, this is so messed up.
Yeah.
The way you drew some of these things, it's like like kind of like almost Spawn. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Spawn comics.
Sure.
Like,
McFarlane, sure.
Yeah, and Capullo did some too. But like like that's kind of like how you draw like a lot of the grimaces and stuff like that. Just like these.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's true. You know, it's funny. Those notebooks I showed you, that was really stuff that was really akin to the stuff I was describing from high school.
Right.
You know, but just the illustration got better over time.
What year range was that?
From the 90s into the 00s, and I don't think I've done one in a few.
So you were out of college, just like.
Oh yeah, those were all while I was bored at work. You know, seriously, like if I like between now there's no such thing as being bored at work because we have so much work and so little people to do it. But back in the 90s or whatever, I'd have a lot of time between illustrations or whatever, so I would just draw in my notebooks.
Oh man!
And I'll tell you, man, you're one of the few people who've ever seen those things. I kid you not. I don't think my wife's even seen those notebooks.
Would she be able to handle it? I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. Honestly, I didn't never show them to anybody.
Yeah.
I just draw them for myself and just throw them on a shelf in a pile, and now they're in my car actually because we were repainting the place and I had to move all my stuff.
My point is, I think you'd be surprised to really see, and I mean the internet now is something that would shed light on this, how many people would enjoy those.
It's a good idea.
I know you're just like like whatever, man.
No, dear, that's a great idea because I have a bottomless supply, whether it's from like the crap I did in high school to like the stuff that was much better more recently. I could entertain people and show them a little piece of my mindset, which is a little terrifying.
Right, it's kind of like a horror version of the Far Side comics. Like I just consider it like a one panel of just like what is going on here.
When I was a kid, man, I guess it was the 80s, though, I used to love the Far Side, as anybody growing up then did.
I was gonna ask you about your inspirations, but like that was a big one for you, Far Side.
Well, sure. I mean, this was his name. Gary Larson was the artist and author, and he's the first to admit that he couldn't draw. But his mind was terrific.
Yeah.
Everything he came up with, and I love the way he drew, by the way. But
I was gonna say, I feel like that's him being humble.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he could draw.
Right.
And he was just as good as anybody else that was on the page at those times.
Right.
But for whatever reason, he just walked away from it.
Yeah.
Stopped doing it.
Really?
He wants no part of it anymore.
Really?
Won't do interviews. Won't do this because everybody loves the Far Side.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. Like a lot of those guys, with the exception of I guess. Burke Breath had just returned to Bloom County, thank God. He put it online. Bloom County was another great cartoon from the 80s that I look forward to seeing every day in the paper.
That was
Bloom County was it was this Opus the Penguin.
He's like the one with kind of like the bigger and it was that cat, right?
Oh yeah, Bill the Cat. Exactly.
Like
so he's back now because he puts his stuff up online.
Didn't he do another series too?
He tried Outland. That was towards, I guess, in the 90s. He tried something after he wanted to like shelf Bloom County. But thank God he's back because he is just as good now as he was then, if not better.
Yeah.
He can do stuff involving Trump now or whatever.
Nice.
So it's timely. So he's not slave to the newspaper anymore because he has no restrictions. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. So obviously you're a fan of those type of comics too, the newspaper comics, not just the superhero.
Back in those days, I used to like Doonesbury and The Far Side and in Bloom County. But not much else. Like not like that old grandma stuff that's been in the paper for like the last billion years.
Where it's like some corny Dennis the Menace style joke where you're just like, all right.
Hager the Horrible or whatever. It's like you wonder how the hell this thing still exists.
One thing, Haggard. Yeah, Haggard's. I wasn't really a Haggard fan either. But the one thing that really taught me, like this was like my first like I'd say drawing teacher, like. Just by observation, was Bill Watterson. Like,
sure.
Obsessed with Calvin Hobbes. Not only is like he's skilled, and I'm sure you've read a lot of them. Yeah. There are some panels he does where like he just walks away from the cartoon style, and he just like really hits you with something heavy.
Oh yeah,
like a T-Rex, and that like looks really cool, or an explosion
in Calvin's imagination.
Yeah, and then he'll go back to it. But not only that, but like they're so eloquently written, and it captivated me like when I was younger.
Yeah,
and I used to like really pay attention to how Bill Watterson drew. Yeah, I feel like I based like my early style just around that.
Well, Watterson was fantastic. fantastic. He's another one. He's fell off the grid. He's another one guy who just won't do anything. He won't do interviews. He's like a recluse now, and he's beloved. Yeah. Everybody loves Calvin.
He must
and Hobbes.
Be rich though, man.
I would think. I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
But he just walked away from it all. I mean, that iconic last strip he did, with like Calvin and Hobbes like walking off into the forest and say, let's go exploring. And that's the last one he drew, as far as I know.
I own them all. So that's funny, man. I don't remember that one.
It's the last one.
Okay, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's the last one. He knew he was hanging it up.
Wow, that's
you
crazy.
know. So and he stayed true to his word. As far as I know, he never went back to it. He might have dabbled in some other stuff in recent years that had nothing to do with Calvin and Hobbes, but for the most part, it was like this small window of time.
Right.
You know, it was he hit all the right notes. He had the.
He really did.
Yeah.
I think it was fire like when it was around. You know what I'm saying? It was just
look at back in those days, man. Back in the '80s, I guess, when that was the heyday of the comic strip, as far as I'm concerned. You know, you'd look up the newspaper and you would see Calvin and Hobbes and Bloom County and The Far Side and all that stuff, and it was like in the daily paper every day, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and Haggard the Horrible and all the other Broomhildas and all the other old stuff that's probably still there, you know, that nobody cares about. But
the Phantom.
The Phantom, yeah. We found out a long time ago. People love their Phantom, man.
Yeah.
We would have it back when, you know, people still, you know, read the paper religiously for the comics. You know, we used to have contests for like, you know, pick your favorite new comic to replace an old comic. And we'd ask, you know, what's your new favorite one? We'd give them samples of new stuff. And we show them like the least favorite of like the stuff we were currently running. And the Phantom would always be on the chopping block, but people either love it or hate it, man. Old people love it. Well, they did. They loved the Phantom.
It was never enough for me. Like when I was younger, I was just like, oh, come on, like this is not an effective way to tell a story. Like,
no, three panels at a time. You know,
just so bad.
Yeah,
especially out of context, you're just like, what? So I can understand like the love it and hate it kind of thing.
Yeah, I never followed the Phantom. I always thought he was a dumb character. He's running around the jungle. He's a white guy like Tarzan in the jungle.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand what the hell that was all about, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know, he's wearing a mask like he's Zorro or something, or for some reason he had to be in disguise. I never quite understood what was going on with the Phantom.
Another one I was really into was I was really into the Boondocks, and like,
oh yeah,
I didn't understand any of it because I was so young, and it's very political.
Oh yeah,
but I just liked, and I forget the name of that artist.
I forget his name too. But I think I've met him. A black guy. He's terrific.
Yeah, he's
really
cool.
He's really good at what he does.
Aaron or Adam?
I should know these things.
Aaron Magruder.
Is that it?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's it.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Aaron Magruder.
Is he still active? Because we don't carry it in our papers. But...
So what happened with him was he stopped the comic series, and then it got picked up for television. Actually,
I remember that. I remember it was on
Swim.
TV. Yeah. Okay.
It had 3 seasons, and on the 4th season, I believe, I could be wrong. On the 4th season, it was either the 3rd season or the 4th season. He refused to write it. He was like, "I'm not gonna write again."
Really?
This kind of repetition. He's like, "I'm not gonna write this series anymore. I want to work on something different."
Wow.
But because there was such an overwhelming demand, somebody else wrote it, and it was still animated by the same studio.
Right.
It was cool because they animated it overseas.
Okay.
So it was all Japanese animation,
Sure.
so it looked really, really good.
Yeah.
But it still was comedic. Whereas most cartoon series that has comedy for adults, like the animation looks kind of like bad, like South Park or Family Guy.
Yeah.
This one, like the animation was amazing, but like it was funny. He refused to write the 4th season, so they had another writer do it, and it was a flop. It was horrible.
Oh,
it was just really, really bad as far as comedy.
It's funny.
And he went on to work on the show called Black Jesus, which is just like a story of Black Jesus, and another comedy series that ran on Adult Swim.
Okay.
But yeah, man. So he just switched up and was like, and I remember his closing statement was like, you know, this is an IP and these characters are really important to me. He's like, well, I want to do something different.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that's just it. Sometimes it is tricky. I mean, that's the luxury of my business because, you know, every week's a different story. You know, it could be funny one week, it could be serious as as the grave the next week. You know, we've done stuff on suicide and you know, whatever, like drugs and alcohol and all kinds of crazy things like self-harm.
Right.
Yeah, you name it. And the next week can be like, right now we're doing, you'd like this, we're doing the art contest.
Nice.
You know, like the teen art contest. We ask readers to send in stuff, and we come up with like 3 or 4 different categories of stuff that the kids can draw. And the best one, you'd like this, is we name 5 random things. And the person drawing it has to draw all 5 of those random things in the illustration. And so that's the only piece that you're getting that was drawn specifically for the contest. Somebody might enter a picture that they drew for their mother like a year ago, for like the portrait category or whatever. But this one with the 5 random things, it's drawn specifically for the contest. And I'll tell you, man, I was looking at some of the stuff last week, and there's some great stuff in there.
Yeah.
Because you pick 5 random things that have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
Like, I forget what they even are for this year. I really do. I forget. I have to go back and look at our own rules. But
are they objects or just like categories?
There's 4 different like noun physical objects, and one thing that's like a sense of something.
Right.
Like
right.
I think this one's a sense of happiness, or no, it's a sense of growth this year. That's what it is. A sense of growth.
Okay, so it's like something that's up for interpretation.
But the other 4 things, like I'm pretty sure one of them is like a chameleon.
Nice.
And then I think this year we have like a kitchen appliance, and 2 other things which I can't remember.
Cool.
But all those 5 things have to be in one illustration, and I'll tell you, man, it's great seeing some kids enter that stuff.
Yeah.
And because I was scanning through some of the stuff last week, just like briefly looking at it, and some effort went into some of these illustrations, and it's like, man, that's impressive. That's something that you dreamed up in your head, or like actually the Reality Kids came up with the 5 objects this year, but just coming up with the overall theme of it is like my idea for like the category number 1. And this year's theme, what the hell is it? Oh, it's the future. Draw the future.
Okay, cool. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so you can interpret that any way you like too, because Draw the Future, the illustration that I used to illustrate it was a kid in a graduation cap, like at the end of his college path, and it's like a physical college path where it's like dropping off into space, like the kid's out in space with his cap, and like the path is falling off into space, and he's at the end of his road.
Yeah.
And now what? Now you're in the world, kid. Good luck.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's how that goes. So when you say draw the future, you can draw like what the world might look like in 100 years or a million years or whatever. You can draw your own future,
right?
And just draw what you think you'll be doing in a year or tomorrow or whatever.
You sound excited about this, man. Are you like somebody who's like really likes like watching like young artists?
Oh my god, totally.
Would you ever like be a teacher or work with kids?
Well, I mean, sure, I would do that. Yeah, I mean, I guess if the job folded tomorrow, yeah, I would do that. Seriously, I mean, yeah, I'd be an art teacher or something like that. But I kind of like. I'm egotistical enough that I still like drawing my own stuff, and like I still like seeing it in print after all these years. I still get a kick out of that. So it's one thing to be a mentor, and I love doing that. We had one kid on the panel. She wasn't even on the panel, honestly. She was like the daughter of someone who worked at our paper. Her name was Erica, and she was so talented. This kid was like a human Xerox machine.
Really?
I mean, she would draw somebody, and she would use like the grid method. For like, gridding out like a person's face, and then she would copy it and use get the grid for the proportions, getting everything in the right places.
Yeah.
But when she drew she drew some characters like some actors like Gary Oldman, for example. It was like she was a human Xerox machine. This kid would just draw everything just like photorealistically.
Yeah.
Just beautiful stuff. And when she she would enter our contest every year until she was until she was 20, and that's the cutoff date. And I think she did a Christopher Walken illustration. It was, and no one could touch it. It was like no one could touch it. I mean, the illustration, it was like a photograph. Wow. It was beautiful.
Wow.
So Christopher Walken, Gary Oldman, and some other people that she drew over the years. It was like just. I mean, I encourage that kid to just keep it up. I mean, I'm not sure what she can do with it in this world of like modern computer animation. Like being able to draw like something like that is great, but then what?
Yeah. See, that was something with me. Like people always used to tell me, like they're like, I wish I had that skill. Like I wish I could draw like you. I was just like, yeah, but like, what am I gonna do with it?
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And except for my own amusement, like just to make stuff.
Yeah.
But it's weird because. I feel like if you have a creative skill like that, you have to think creatively in order for it to benefit you. Like you have to make a series that like, or something that like can be profitable on its own. Because unless you work for a company that deals in 2D animation, which is like a thing of the past, you can't really do much with that.
I know.
That's the sad but true thing about being good at drawing.
It's the truth, man. We all love it. All of us who do it, we love it doing it. And God bless you if you can find some way, turn it into an outlet. You know, I mean, I guess comics are still around and they'll always be around. I like to think.
Yeah.
You know, because that's a great medium, but it's super competitive. I would imagine these days.
It's so intense.
Yeah,
it's so intense.
I can imagine.
When I pick up a Marvel comic book, because I read mostly Eastern stuff that was like published like in the late '90s and stuff.
Okay.
But when I pick up like a Marvel or DC, I'm just blown away by like how good it looks.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like those people truly are on a whole nother level. So it can be kind of disheartening for people that want to do that.
It could. I mean, at sometimes modern comics these days, I look at them. There are a lot of, to me, they look like almost like art books.
Right.
You know, like there's so little dialogue in the story. The stories, like some pages are just big ass panels of like terrific artwork.
It's that whole show not tell thing, though. You don't want to just beat people over the head. But like, whereas the old style comics that used to read, like the Superman ones, those are like really dialogue heavy and real exposition heavy. Like they're hitting you with like, now I'm in outer space, and like Superman's like fighting and talking about what he's doing. Like, this enemy is impervious. I can't break his guard. You know?
And not only that, but back in those days, those comics were truly for kids.
Right.
They were for 6-7-year-old kids.
Right.
Nowadays, I don't think that's the case anymore. I think comics are pretty much, they've grown up.
For older people.
They're for older people.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, you look back and look at some of the stuff you read as a kid, the Superman stuff and stuff like that. And it was super rudimentary. Like, every month they would try some other gimmick to how Lois Lane could, try to prove that Clark Kent is Superman. That was like the big thing back in those old days,
Well, it happened.
Yeah, well, it happened. Well, she figured it out finally, this Ace Reporter.
This week could be the week.
Could be the week. I think eventually they just stopped giving it. They gave up on that. I think Lois is with Superman and Clark at the same time now. She knows now, I think. Last I saw.
Man, I'm not even sure if she's alive in the DC universe now.
I don't know.
A lot of it's changed.
It could be, man.
Yeah.
But you think back on that Ace Reporter, all those decades, like couldn't figure out the guy was just wearing glasses, you know?
Right. Yeah. Out of all the superhero backstories, I think his is the silliest, and also like that's the costume that just looks funny. Like the Batman costume, all right, that can be kind of intimidating. The Spider-Man costume, it just looks cool, and then Superman's costume, like if you saw him in a grocery store, you'd laugh at him.
You'd laugh at him. And it's funny because a lot of those comics, when Siegel and Schuster first developed that character back in 1938,
the two brothers that
they were Jewish. They're Jewish kids from Cleveland.
Yeah.
I don't know if they weren't brothers because they had different last names. They're just friends.
Yeah.
So when they came up with the character, they were trying to because there wasn't a superhero in 1938.
Right.
I mean, there were other characters like Doc Savage, which was like...
was he a detective or something?
I forget what the hell his story was. He was the Man of Bronze or something like that. I don't know. I think he was more like a detective. Yeah.
Okay.
But like the first superhero really was Superman, and that was their creation, and they wanted him to look like he was like almost wearing a circus man uniform. That's why he has the underwear. That's why he has the underwear on the outside of his pants, like it was like, I guess, like a leotard thing.
So that does look like an acrobat. Or something
that he was like a circus strongman.
Yeah.
The guy lifting all the big round weights.
Right.
The big 1,000 pounds.
I never even thought of it like that.
That's where it all came from. That's why all the characters back in those days, they all were wearing like their underwear on the outside of their shorts
to mimic
to mimic that look. So even now when you see Superman in the comics, a lot of times he's still wearing the red underwear because it's so iconic.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll try to morph it into like a new modern take on it, and it just doesn't look right.
Coming from a true fan,
I guess.
Someone
I don't
who's
know.
loved it forever.
I don't know. It just doesn't they've tried to like mask it and like make it like a dark purple or something or whatever. I
feel like in every new movie it looks different.
Yeah. They do their best in Man of Steel and like Batman vs Superman to make it look less goofy. But
did you like those?
From what I understand, they say the Batman vs Superman would be a lot better if it wasn't cut. From what I understand, they cut a lot out of it. And
from the film or from the actual comic?
From the
based
film.
Off of? Okay.
From the film.
Okay.
And like they say that. I mean, I haven't seen the full version, but I hear it's way better.
Right.
And it tells the story much better and it clears up a lot of the plot holes and stuff. So, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I didn't hate the version that I saw. I didn't love it.
Right.
Man of Steel. I grew up with Christopher Reeve in the 70s when I was a kid.
Right. So I see the kind of Superman that you would like, man. Because the one Christopher Nolan's like, it's too serious, And
it's no fun.
There's no fun.
There's no fun.
He's killing people. I'm like, oh, is Superman doing this for him, man?
Like Marvel gets it right for the most part. Marvel, they have the right. they have the right budget and the right writers, and they
Yeah.
have like, you know, the right cast for the most part of all the characters. They did a great job with
I
it.
saw the new Guardians of the Galaxy last night. And
Did you like it?
It was a blast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard it. The first one, I didn't see the second one, but the first one was great.
Yeah.
You know, Marvel has his act together, man.
They do.
Really do.
Oh,
You know?
but back to Superman real quick. I read once that since the two brothers that made Superman, they were Jewish immigrants to America, and
Right.
people, I'm not sure if it's theorized or if it's actually something that's true, but they say that like the whole story with Superman being like from Krypton and he comes to Earth and like he has to learn to kind
Right.
of be with people.
Right.
It's like them trying to assimilate to the culture of America.
That makes
Like,
sense.
That's people say like when they read Superman, like originally like that's what the concept was.
And well, I tell you, that's funny because he was automatically in disguise. Like he
Right.
didn't just come to the world and the United States and just be Superman.
Right.
He felt it necessary to hide himself for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
like to blend in. So, and blending in, what's more, you know, immigrant than that?
Yeah.
You know, trying to assimilate.
Yeah.
You know, so that could be the whole story behind that, because why they're super identities at all, or secret identities.
Right.
You know, secret identities. Yeah. You know, why? I mean, because why? If you had superpowers, would you really need a secret identity? What would be the point? You know?
Exactly.
You know?
Anybody that would oppose you could
Yeah,
just
you know,
eradicate them.
You know, the thing that kills me about Superman too is that he always tells the truth, right? But no, there's like this big fundamental lie that he does all the time.
That's
Like
such
he's-
a good observation.
You know, he's like the truth, justice, and the American way, and all of that. But you know, he lies every day of his life.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
his best friends.
he's living a lie.
Yeah, you know, it's like it's super contradictory. Like those are the kind of things you read when you're a little kid, and you're like something's just not right there. You know?
I never even thought about that until now, but that's so
Yeah.
true. Was there any other like continuity based comic that you were into? Like
Oh, back in those days, I pretty much anything that I can get my hands on. Because
yeah.
I grew up in like a small town in upstate Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
This town was so small, there was you couldn't even buy comics. Here's a good story. So I used to go to the barber shop, because the barber shop, for whatever reason, would have, like, you know, in the waiting area, comics and magazines. And I'm a little kid, and I used to beg this guy for the comics. Can I buy these off you? Can my mom buy? Because they were like a quarter. You know, it wasn't like, you know,
Right.
that wasn't a big break in the bank.
Right.
And this guy, every once in a while, would just let me have them. This guy he was wonderful.
In your eyes, you must be like, this guy's the
Oh,
best.
dude, I still have the comics.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. I still have them. After, like, you know, close to 50 years, like 45 years or whatever. I still have them back in the 80s.
Hold on to those, man.
Oh, I did. Not only that, but when I was in college, back in the pre-eBay days, I would raid every comic store in the area trying to find my old comics that were, you know, beat to hell, because
Yeah.
I read them, and sometimes they didn't have covers to begin with
Yeah.
when I got them from a garage sale or whatever when I was a kid.
course.
So I'd see the covers for the first time, and it was exciting. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of fun. It was like a treasure hunt. And of course, now with eBay, you know, forget it, because it's
Super easy, yeah.
super easy. But anyway, long story short, years go by, and I guess it was maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, I went back to the barber shop, the upstate. The guy is still there after like 20, 30 years. He's still there.
Really?
And I recognize his name. He's in a different building, but I remember that his first name was Ed. So I went to this other barbershop with a guy that has his name Ed on the door. And I walked in and I said, "Did you used to like have a shop down the street?" And he said, "Yeah, that was me." And so I said, "You were the guy who let me have comics when I was a little kid." And he had no recollection
idea,
whatsoever.
yeah.
So what I did was I gave him one of my drawings. I gave him a drawing that I drew for the paper. It was a good illustration too. You'd love it. I wish I had a picture of it someplace. I
Was
probably
it one of the ones I've seen though?
Possibly. It was done a long time ago. It was back in the early days of like smoking being banned from places. Like, you know, now you can't smoke anywhere. But back in the 90s,
sound
like
familiar.
there was like, I had to draw this guy smoking in an alley. Like, you know, out in the cold, in the dark, and he was puffing away on a cigarette like an outcast.
Yeah.
You know, of course, nowadays that's everywhere.
Yeah.
But back then it was novel, like you can't smoke here anymore. Back in, say it was probably the mid to late 90s. So I drew this great black and white illustration of this guy standing out there like in an alley. And I did it from like a down angle on the guy, so it gave it perspective of like looking at him from above, like under the spotlight. It was a pretty good illustration,
Sweet.
if I say so myself. Anyway, so I gave this original drawing to the guy, the barber up in upstate, and he was flabbergasted. man, he was like, and I found out from like some of my family that still lives up there that he was talking about it and told everybody about it. And there was like a blog that was about that whole town that it made it onto the blog upstate that like this returning son who brought art back to this guy who apparently was, according to all his friends, a real cheapskate. And he never gave anything away for free. So they were shocked that this guy gave comics to this little kid who had such a major impact on my life.
Right.
You know, these comics were like gold to me.
Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah,
so,
man. Yeah. I was the same way, man. I was, and that's cool because that guy, honestly, dude, he probably like, you know, attributed that to your like success, to, like, oh, like, you know, even though he didn't remember it, you know.
He didn't remember it, but he remembered it after I gave him the drawing. It's like, you know, and it made an impression on him. And here he was, just a guy giving comics to a kid in like 1975.
Right.
You know, just this kid was begging this guy for comics, and these comics became my like prized possessions.
Dude.
Because they're the ones I learned how to draw from.
Dude.
You know, so, and like I said, I still have them, and I still have a collection of roughly about, I don't know, maybe 50 to 75 old comics from that era.
Sweet.
That are like, you know, the holy grails for me. And then they're not worth anything like monetarily. A couple of them are. A couple of them had like key appearances of characters and whatnot, but a lot of them were like Archies and stuff like that. It's stuff that, you know, you can still get them for like a dime a dozen now.
Yeah.
But to me, they're like, you know, they're like my history.
That's awesome.
You know,
I was like that too. I used to go to an after school care thing in elementary school because my mom would work late, and I used to be at it was pretty much the school cafeteria. They let all the kids just like, kind of hang out in the school cafeteria, and they brought up games and stuff.
Sure.
And back then, I collected Sonic the Hedgehog comic books.
Oh, sure.
Religiously, man. I had a bunch. I still have. I must have over 100 in my room.
I can see that in your style now, man.
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so I remember they brought stuff out to like for kids to play with, and she brought out a Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, and dude, it was exactly what you said. Like the cover was missing. Exactly. I was like, I was like, I want to have this so bad. I told her, I was like, can I please have this? And she didn't give it to me right away. She was just like,
oh no,
I don't know. She was just like, this used to be like my son's or whatever, and I was like, all right, I understand. But then eventually she gave it. And
awesome.
It to me,
Same
and
thing.
I was like, this is great, dude. Yeah. Like I used to really like push for it.
Yeah, that's funny. Because I'll tell you, I mean, you know, nowadays I guess it's easier for kids to find stuff online or whatever.
Right.
But back in those days, man, this small town I was in, there were no comics anywhere except for the damn barbershop.
I feel like film really inspired you too, though.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Definitely. Like I almost see you as kind of like a film kind of guy.
Oh,
like,
when I was a kid, I was in 6th grade, and we had a great teacher. His name was Mr. Richards. And he was all about science fiction. And he turned us on to so many movies back in those days. And that was probably like around 79 when the first Alien movie came out. Which is a movie, I guess, probably isn't really for kids. I was like in 6th grade when
I just
that
saw
came
the
out.
new one last week.
How was it?
I was all right. There's potholes. And...
That's what I heard, yeah. But I was funny because I went online this morning and I watched a great... on YouTube, it's one of the great video blogs of like everything wrong with and movies, and so I watched the one that was everything wrong with Alien this morning, and they point out a lot of the plot holes, like why are you bringing a cat on a spaceship and all stuff like that, you know, stuff like that.
The cat,
you know, whatever. But even looking back at that original Alien from �79. And the artwork of H.R. Giger.
H.R. Geiger. Oh, Geiger.
Yeah, Giger. Yeah, yes, say it right. Saying it, his artwork. Oh my God! Even though it was like all sexual and weird,
scary, dude,
scary stuff.
Scary stuff.
But the guy was nuts. I mean,
goodness.
you look at some of his books and his paintings. I mean, he was totally out there, and he was probably an influence on me, man. Even back in '79 when I saw Alien,
I can see that. Yeah.
I drew the alien characters and the alien monster left and right.
Oh, dude, they're awesome. I just love looking at that. Like, the alien, man. That's just so cool.
I tell you, watching the original '79 movie, watching it now, it's still freaking awesome.
It's so cool.
You know, it really is. It holds up so well after all these
it's
decades.
A good monster movie.
Compare that to the other stuff that was out there at the same time. You know, even Star Wars looks a little dated compared to Alien. Maybe not. Star Wars is a bad example. But like, okay, go back another couple of years to a movie like Logan's Run, if you're familiar with that.
No.
It came out in '76, and it was like the big science fiction movie of the time.
Yeah. And
it looks so dated. There's robots that are comical in this thing, and everything else that came out. But Ridley Scott, when he did Alien and then Blade Runner a couple of years later, was so ahead of the curve, man.
Yeah.
He was so great. I don't know. I guess he's not so great anymore because the sequels, prequels, or whatever. Just
I don't know, but I feel you, man. Those movies do hold. They stand the test of time. It's like The Shining, man. Like that movie will always be scary, you know. And it's just like I'm when it comes to like looking at like Giger's like interpretations of stuff, and and seeing how like a drawing can really make an effect on film. Because like I'm not sure if you've seen Prometheus.
I have,
like,
yeah.
Okay, but you know like the room like where he's like a pilot, like the alien
Yeah,
pilot
the
ship?
derelict ship, yeah.
That's like almost like verbatim like one of his drawings.
Oh,
You know what I'm
totally.
saying? It's almost like detail for detail.
I think he was there on the set when they were building that.
Dude, I love seeing stuff like that. I
Yeah.
love looking how like his illustrations made into a movie, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the other way around where you're seeing movies in it, it's making it into your illustrations.
That's right.
I've always pinned you for kind of like a monster movie guy, like
Oh,
are you it's
yeah.
like Godzilla and stuff
No,
like that.
not really Godzilla, because that was all those campy Japanese things when I was a kid. They were fun to watch,
Yeah.
but you never took them seriously. Like when Star Wars was huge, Close Encounters was pretty huge when I was a kid. There were Spielberg and Lucas, they were the kings at the time, making movies. And then, then Alien was the game changer. That really was, man. That was that whole dark tone of it and everything else. And John, the first cast member to die just died like a few weeks ago. John Hurt,
so sad.
the first guy to die in the movie, also dies the first time in real life.
That's crazy.
And the next guy in line, if it continues, will be Harry Dean Stanton. He's the second guy to get killed in the movie, and he's the oldest guy in the cast.
That's interesting.
So we'll see.
Wow.
I remember when I was a kid, I used to get all those like monster magazines, like Starlog and stuff, and they had like all the specials on the Alien movie. And I remember distinctly when I was a kid seeing like they had the birth dates of all the actors. Like Sigourney Weaver was born in 1940, whatever. And I remember Harry Dean Stanton was born in 1929. That's been burned in my memory for like 30 plus years. Because I couldn't believe how old he was.
Shocked.
I couldn't, because of 1929. What, are you kidding me? You didn't look that old. And but looking back on it, I think it was 29. Maybe it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 1929. I have to look that up. Again.
So this movie really influenced you. How old were you when you first saw it?
Well, in '79, I was probably 12.
Dude, that's kind of young to watch that movie.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, honestly, my first interpretation of that wasn't even the movie. It was the comic book.
Oh,
it was like it was put out by Heavy Metal Magazine.
Oh, okay.
So there was all the languages in it. The F word and everything else was all right there in print. And the gore was amped up,
dude.
Like I'll never forget the scene of the first chest burster in the comics.
Yeah.
Like in the movie, it's gross, but in the comic, it was like amped up to 11. Because he comes pouring out of Kane's poor body, and there's like the shower of blood, and it was like the artist was this guy named Walter Simonson, terrific artist. I think he's still working today. Yeah,
Cool.
And,
what publishing? Oh, okay. It wasn't like a IDW or Dark House.
It was no, it was before that. It was like almost like one of the first graphic novels.
Interesting.
And I think it was produced by Heavy Metal Magazine.
And that's what you said.
Yeah. Heavy Metal was like it's actually an international cartoon magazine. I'm not sure where it was based. I think it was based out of Europe. I think.
Nice.
I don't know if it got because a lot of the artists were like these French artists and whatnot. And then that was another thing that influenced me when I was a kid, because I would get my hands on Heavy Metal Magazine. And it had really graphic stuff, and it had sex and violence and stuff that you couldn't see in normal American comics.
It was more adult comics.
It was totally adult comics.
Yeah.
And so I would find them, wherever, and then I would see this stuff like, oh my God, this is like super violent. And there was some disturbing stuff I saw in comics that's still burned in my memory today. Like I remember this one sequence was about this. It was like this wordless comic, and it came out. I think it was also '79, and it was horribly graphic. It was set in like somewhere in South America, and this Aztec woman or some indigenous woman saw like a glowing ball like float down from the sky, and she goes and tells all her her people about it, and they look at her like she's crazy. And this is a wordless comic strip. There's no dialogue.
Yeah, but you get the gist.
You get the gist. You get all the pictures. And so what they do, and this is so horrible, the elders or the religious people go out in the forest where she saw the floating ball or light or whatever, and they see it. And now she's a witch.
Oh, man.
So what did they do to witches?
They got burned.
She got burned at the stake, and they show it in graphic detail.
Whoa.
Oh, it's horrible. Dude, it's burned in my memory.
Really?
Yeah, literally burned in my memory. Oh, it's horrible. This poor woman, like, just slowly, like, her leg was on fire at first, and she's, like, raising her leg, and, like she's trying to avoid the pain. It was so disturbing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was it like a meteor or something? Like
No, they never explained it.
Oh, okay.
It was just the thing, it was just
Yeah.
a thing floating out in it was some kind of like mystical thing. But the whole point was, and the last panel is her charred remains on the stake.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it.
She's reduced down to like, I'm sure that was true of witches back in, whenever.
Right.
It was like this disturbing comic.
Right. Which
God.
is pretty crazy. But to me, that's also what's so cool about comics. So like when you see a scene of violence in a movie, a lot of times it's very rapid. You know, like it's changing.
Yeah,
It's
right,
so the
right.
impact is there, but if you watch enough of it, you become desensitized to it.
That's a great point.
But with comics, like that moment is very static. Like the moment you described where like the xenomorph or whatever it's called like pops out of his chest.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just
that's burned in my memory. That's right.
But the other thing that the comic has in its arsenal is the page turn.
Yeah.
So like you don't know it's the same thing. What's next until you turn the page and it still hits you with that kind of thing. And so that's always amused me too, man. Like I used to read horror comics and stuff when I was little, and I was like, whoa, this has like a similar effect. Like it's not as scary as watching a scary movie because there's not a lot of music.
But you're right, it was the page turn.
But yeah, man, that page turn, like that's masterful comic artists, like comic people that I really study, like they always use that to their advantage. Like it's a big reveal, like boom, like
and that's just what that one was, man. It was on the left side. It was on the left side, so you see it fresh when you turn the page, and there it was. It was like the chest burster coming out of Kane's stomach, and it was like. Like I said, it was really pushes the envelope on that one.
But yeah, like you keep saying, burn into your mind. That stuff affects what you draw later on.
It does, man. There is stuff that I've seen as a kid that I wouldn't even want to see now. And, honestly, there was this one. I remember I was flipping through a book in Kmart. They used to sell these art books. Really, they were like space art books. They would take these paintings from like space artists at the time, and they
space stuff. Was that a big thing in the 80s?
I guess, I don't know. I was a kid like in 79, 80 or whatever.
Yeah,
12, 13 years old, and so these art books were great because they're trying to come up with some Cockney story to like tie these great paintings together. And it was impossible because the paintings were painted to be like individual pieces,
right? And
they tried to like connect them somehow in some stupid story, whatever. So it was just an excuse to buy these great paintings of these great artists, great color. I forget some of the artist's name, but anyway, there was this one illustration I saw that influenced me terribly. It was this horrible. It was another disturbing thing.
Jeez.
It was like this book on Transylvania, and I don't even want to look it up on eBay because I don't even want to see this goddamn book.
Sheesh.
It was like talking about it was like a tourist guide to Transylvania or something, and the illustration was about how going to Transylvania is dangerous because there's all these insect infestations.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Oh, I see.
So the illustration was this guy screaming with like these slug-like, worm-like creatures eating out of his face and his eyes and in his mouth and his ear, and they were like eating through his skin.
Oh man!
Oh, it was so disturbing. I mean, not that it didn't stop me from drawing it years later.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. So I, as a matter of fact, I drew that on the wall next to my roommate's bed. In college, I drew my roommate Frank, and I drew his face with like all the worms coming out of it.
Yeah.
So it was influenced. But I'll tell you what, man, I don't want to see that original illustration.
Of course not, man. It's just stomach turning. But
that
was the intended effect of the artist, though. So for them, good job.
Yeah. It's burned in this kid's memory after like 4 decades. Yeah,
man. Yeah. So like, in addition to comics and stuff, were you into like any animation or cartoons at the time?
Animation. Let me think.
So
Back in those, I did. Like when I was a kid, the Saturday morning cartoons were a thing, and the Super Friends was a big animated thing. At Superman's Justice League. Yeah, back when it was like a kidded down version of the Justice League, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, kind of like a Mr. T style.
Yeah, kind of like in that same kind of style. They had like 2 teenage characters and a dog that were like the sidekicks that palled along with them. But it was the key DC heroes like Batman, Superman, Robin, of course, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman.
Yeah.
And they were all, and every once in a while they'd have like a guest, and that was a big deal. Like the one episode had the Flash, and that was a big deal. And like another one had like Green Arrow or something like that, and that was another big deal.
Yeah.
So, but I used to watch that religiously when I was a kid. And I loved that show because it was, again, it was Superman coming to life. And this was before the Superman movie. I remember that when I was a kid too, because I was 11 in '78 when that came out, and that was a big deal for me too.
Yeah. See, I was kind of like that, but it was the opposite. So like I didn't really find like any kind of like adult like comics aimed at a more mature audience, but I kind of found more like adult animation. Like that's what really got me into anime, because like anime kind of like, over in Japan, there's a big cultural difference. Like animation, here in the West, like animation, that's strictly for children.
Yeah.
But over there, like people will watch a sitcom that's like completely animated, but it has like a serious continuity-based story. So a lot of it is more adult, and like that's what really drew me in and got me into like making my own stuff is watching those series, man, that were like because there's just so many, and the Japanese like ones that I really liked were about like ninjas and samurais.
Oh
and,
yeah.
like, dude, I was so into those.
There was a great one on MTV back in the 90s. They had this show called Liquid TV or something like that. And it was all the cutting edge animation of the time.
Yeah.
A lot of it you can tell was Japanese.
Yeah.
And they had the one character was Aeon Flux was one. They turned it into a movie with Charlize Theron that didn't go anywhere. But the animation in the original cartoon was really cutting edge.
Right.
It was like super like edgy at the time, and it was good stuff to watch. And MTV would back when they played music and videos and stuff like that. They dabbled in like cartoons, and
sweet. Man.
It was still the animation. You would love it. I mean, if you could go, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. It was called Liquid TV. Aeon Flux, and it was huge. And around the same time in the 90s, my buddies and I would always get together and watch Ren and Stimpy. That was like,
that show is insane.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like I can't explain some of the stuff on that show.
No, especially the early ones.
But did that air on Cartoon Network? Like,
again, that was MTV too.
Really?
That was MTV. Like I'm pretty sure it was. Like because we used to like back in the early 90s, my buddies and I would all gather around and watch it every Friday night. I think it was on. I'm pretty sure it was MTV.
Yeah.
And so we would look forward. We get like a case of beer and sit there and watch. We would watch Ren and Stimpy, and it was so twisted.
It's insane.
And
I love it.
Me too. We used to laugh our asses off on that. And I'll tell you, right when they got the brilliant people behind Nickelodeon. You know what? It was Nickelodeon. Because
they aired it originally on Nickelodeon?
Believe it? Yeah.
Wow.
And the geniuses at Nickelodeon fired the creator. The guy's name was John Crickfalusi or something like that.
Well, I feel like you had to eventually.
Well, because he was always late with deadlines.
Oh, really?
And so he provided the voice of Ren as well as, the mastermind behind the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And so the cartoon went, and they got Billy West, the voice of one of the M&Ms on TV. Billy West does tons of like voices for animation. He was Stimpy.
Oh, okay.
So Stimpy took over for both voices. He did Ren and Stimpy. And Crickfalusi was the guy who did like all the crazy, creepy, insane stuff that Ren used to do in the earlier episodes. He'd always go batshit crazy or whatever, like space madness and all that stuff. That was all out of his head.
Yeah.
And then after Billy West took over and they had different animators come on board, it turned into a gross out cartoon.
Yeah.
It turned into like poop jokes.
Yeah.
And, gross out. I mean, there's nothing wrong with gross out stuff because they dabbled in that in the original ones. But the original ones were twisted. Right. And they stopped being twisted and they just got gross.
They were creepy in the beginning.
Yeah, man. Yeah. There's a lot to be said about Twisted. Twisted goes far.
Didn't it ultimately like the FCC kind of end them? I know it was kind of like a power move.
I know there were a couple episodes that were they couldn't even air.
Yeah.
There was a couple. I guess you could find them online now, but there were a couple episodes that they couldn't even air on TV.
Yeah.
And then and they tried to bring it back in the OOs, I guess, with Crickfalusi. But by then, the magic was over, and it was super gross out. Like they went the wrong way.
Where it's just like,
they went the wrong way.
Yeah,
they went from like crazy, like lunatic stuff to like just being gross,
just disgusting. Yeah,
like booger jokes and stuff like that.
But it's weird. I mean, those styles. I mean, there's a lot of tropes in those animations that like kind of exist. Like I liked always when they would have like a super close up of like the face.
Oh yeah,
it was like very very detailed.
Oh yeah,
like,
all the pores and zits and
I love those. That's just so funny and like that became really prevalent in SpongeBob. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something.
Well, the animation on SpongeBob was super similar to Ren and Stimpy.
Right. Yeah.
Super. I mean, I'm wondering some of the same studio might be behind it or somehow.
Well, it's SpongeBob's Nickelodeon too, but
it could be the same people. Some of the same animators. I bet you worked on both of them because I look at SpongeBob and I see a lot of the same, especially around the eyes with the characters like squint their eyes. It's like, oh yeah, I could see Ren in that.
Yeah. It's cool, man, because that style has become so popular. There's a lot of online cartoonists that just strictly make YouTube videos that really emulate that style.
Yeah.
Oni Cartoons is one of them, and like, people still find that funny today. It's like this real big exaggeration of something that's normally simplified.
Yeah.
That's just there's something so humorous in it. And
that's
like,
true. That's true.
And
man.
it's I don't know. I guess it's the contrast that really makes the comedy. But that's something that inspired me too. That cartoon specifically.
I used to love that.
Just
man.
because like it has a childish appearance. But it just draws you into this madness.
Space Madness is the one we always remember, and then like the stupid stuff like Powdered Toast Man and Log and all those. I can still sing half the songs. It's been like 25 years. Honest to God, that's probably the last cartoon I watched religious. Nah, that's not true because I still watch Bob's Burgers and.
Oh, you like modern cartoons too?
Oh yeah. I watch Bob's Burgers religiously. I'm sure it's on tonight. I hope. And then I still watch The Simpsons after like a quarter century or more.
What's your opinion on that?
I mean, it's
that's
The Simpsons
controversial.
are like it's like an old friend.
Right.
You know, they're still there after all these decades, and they're still doing it. And I still love Homer. I mean, without Homer, the show probably wouldn't have lasted. You know, when it's a Bart episode, I probably don't care about it as much,
Right.
or a Lisa episode. But when it's something that Homer's doing, it still holds it for me. Or Homer's friends. You know, sometimes those are pretty funny gags. But obviously, they had their peak at one point too.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have the same quality as they had like back when Conan O'Brien was one of the writers, probably back in those days in the 90s. They probably hit like their stride. But I'm a big Family Guy fan.
Dude, I just had it on before he came here.
Did you? Yeah.
Seth MacFarlane, like, he kind of just, like, it's just punchline after punchline. Whereas, like, I feel like the Family Guy is a little bit of a setup.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But, like,
yeah. No, I still love. If I had to put my comics or my cartoons in a pecking order these days on Sunday nights, it goes number one is Bob's Burger, which I used to hate at first.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I wasn't turned on by it at all. I hated the animation style, but I did like a 180, and it's like my favorite now.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah, and then I like Family Guy second, and I used to like American Dad and the other show that MacFarlane did,
Robot Chicken.
Robot Chicken, and and then there was the other one with Cleveland show. I like that too. That didn't last for whatever reason, but I liked it, and I still like The Simpsons after all these decades.
So you're not into Futurama?
Oh, I love Futurama.
Okay,
I forgot about that one.
I was gonna say
that's not still on, is it?
No, that's not still on. But,
yeah,
no.
That was Billy West, by the way. The voice of Stimpy is the voice of Fry.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
That just occurred to me. Yeah, that's Billy West.
Did you ever read like Matt's original comics, like
what, Matt Groening?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Life in Hell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my wife loves those too.
Yeah,
we used to have books and books of those old books because that was stuff that came out in the '80s, I guess, maybe even the late '70s when Groening was still in college or whatever. But he was right on the mark, man.
Yeah.
You know, look back at some of that stuff. You know, it's funny. A lot of that stuff carries over into The Simpsons, especially his early days in The Simpsons. But yeah, the Life in Hell is still great. Yeah.
See, like that's something I don't understand. Like somebody so knowledgeable as you, like why would you not try your hand at comics? Like I know you said like you don't want to be repetitious, but you should like try a little something.
Yeah, I know.
You might like it, man.
I know.
I'm telling you.
In another life, maybe I probably would have liked it. I don't know. I mean, I guess in this day and age, I mean, it's something I probably thought I was going to get into in college, honestly.
Yeah.
But it just didn't happen. And like as much as I like comics now, I don't really read them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I collect them because it's all money. I collect them for I collect Golden Age comics, Silver Age comics, stuff.
So
like
wait,
that.
you hit up like comic book stores and look for like stuff?
Back in the day, I would too. Yeah, but nowadays you can't find that stuff in stores for the most part. Yeah, that's not true. You could once in a while.
If you go to a big place.
If you go to a big place,
Midtown Comics in New York. They have a ton of stuff.
Do they really? Yeah, they have a ton of price tags too.
Yeah, they do.
It's
expensive.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I go to comic shows still and look for stuff. If I can buy it cheap and sell it high, sure, I'll still do that. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, I like collecting. I'm a big collector of comics too. So, you know, I have a huge collection, and I probably should sell it and make some money before my house burns down, which is what happened to a buddy of mine upstate.
What?
Seriously, man, just like a month ago. My buddy had like $1 million collection, if not more, and his house caught fire, and he lost everything.
Of comics?
Of comics, yeah. He lost his 2 pets too, his 2 cats, and ever since that happened to my buddy, it's like kind of like eye opening. It's like, okay, what do I have all these comics for? You know, it's
That's super.
You can lose everything like that. You know,
man.
Yeah,
and that gives me anxiety just to hear.
Now tell me about it. Yeah, I know. So it's like your biggest nightmare. So anyway, but yeah, so I guess in this day and age, it's better to just to draw your stuff yourself, you know, and get it out there, put it online. So if your house does burn down, you still exist some way.
That's what I'm doing, man.
You know,
I'm doing it as fast as I can.
Upload everything online somehow or another. So if something does happen, you know, you always have it.
Right, and that's what you got to do too, man.
I know, you're right. So on that note, I probably should start wrapping this up.
Hey, man, no problem.
I need to get going. So
that's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude. I just wanted to just take the chance to say thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on.
are you kidding me? Thank you.
And just talking about stuff. I didn't know how much time you
I
had.
could talk for like another 3 hours, man.
Yeah,
We'll
man.
just do it again sometime.
Yeah, totally, dude. If you just want to plug your Facebook that you have your illustrations on real quick.
Oh, what is it? It's just Tom Raski artwork. I usually have to invite people to it, but if you have any interest in it on it, by all means, you're welcome.
All right.
Tom Raski artwork. It's just regular Facebook. You'll find me.
All right, sweet. Because I'm gonna check it out after this, honestly.
Oh yeah, everything goes on there. Not everything, but like just everything that goes in print mix it on that.
Sweet.
And some stuff that wasn't in print. So I dig around.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, Andrew. It was great.
All right, man. Appreciate it so much. Tom Raski. Everyone check out his Facebook. See you later.